it's a simple job. They can just pick it up as they go. As a trainer, I have heard this comment or something similar to it too many times in my career. Now, it is true that each employee brings to the job certain skills, experiences, and even talents. That's part of the reason we hired them. But every company, every organization is unique. We do things in our own special way, and that way is not always intuitive. We can't just leave it to the employees to figure out how to do it. Another thing that I've learned over years of experience is that there's 5 names for everything. What you call a widget, I call a gizmo. Now, a lot of times, the first step in training is simply to align ourselves with the terminology that each company uses. Let me give you an example. Let's say we have an employee named Joe. Now, Joe is really good at math, and I've asked him to calculate OEE. OEE is a very simple calculation. You multiply the availability of the machine by the performance of the machine by the quality of the output. Now, I asked Joe to calculate this for me. He wasn't able to do it. So my only option is to fire Joe, right? Absolutely not. Joe's a great employee, and he knows how to do the calculations. The question I have to ask now is, why did he fail? Turns out, I assumed he knew where the variables for availability, performance, and quality were. He didn't have that information, so he couldn't do the calculation. As a matter of fact, Joe's previous employer referred to quality not as quality, but as yield. You see, quality is simply the number of good parts created divided by the total number of parts created. Pretty straightforward. But if he's calling it yield and I'm calling it quality, we're not communicating. The truth of the matter is, when we fail to train our employees, we prepare them to fail. But as an organization, what exactly do we get out of training? When I'm training somebody, I'm not making money for the company. So what is the benefit of all this to us as a company? Well, to me, the first one, and probably the second most important one, is employee satisfaction and retention. If I take the time to train somebody and really make sure they know how to do their job, they're going to see that as me valuing them. I've put the time and effort into them so that they know how to do the job right. Now, not only does that give them satisfaction in their job, which makes them more likely to stay, it also increases productivity. If they know how to do their job and they're doing it right all the time, number one, I don't have to worry about as many mistakes and rework. And number two, I don't have to pay somebody to watch over them to make sure they're doing it right. The next big thing that it does is it helps them develop their skills. If I train people and I find that they have an aptitude for something, I can do additional training for that. Who knows? That person may even be able to move up to another position in the company. Another benefit that grows out of training is adaptability. What you don't want to find in your organization is you only have one person that can do a certain function. What happens if they get sick? What happens if they win the lottery? You are in a mess. So it's really important that we cross-train, that we have other people that can do each job within an organization. Now, there's a couple of benefits to this. If I've got a well cross-trained organization and somebody has a medical emergency, I've got somebody that can step into that position and take over that responsibility. Or let's just say that for some reason or another, the workload has drastically increased. I can pull somebody that has less of a workload to help until this issue is resolved. There's a lot of benefits to cross-training. Plus, it helps with communication. If I know what you're doing in your job and you are sending me product, I can help you troubleshoot if we have issues because I understand what you're dealing with. Likewise, if you're my customer and I'm delivering something for you within the organization and I know what you do in your job, it makes it easier for me to deliver a better product to you. One big advantage to training and engaging your employees is innovation. If somebody's just going through the motion and they're doing the job, they may be doing a wonderful job, but they're not noticing things. If they're really paying attention and they're thinking about what they're doing, they start looking for better ways to do that. That's where innovation comes in. Some of the best ideas I've ever seen in businesses came from the folks doing the work every day because they, do the work every day. They're the experts on it. They know it inside and out. They know what works and they know what doesn't work. A lot of times they know why what doesn't work. So if you tap into that by training them how to problem solve and look at things in different ways, it's a big reward for the organization. Now, probably the most important of all of this is safety and compliance. It's an absolute must that I train my people to do their jobs in a safe manner. If I take shortcuts with safety, that can create big issues for me and the company. So it's critical that we teach people the right and safe way to do things. Of course, every business in the world has rules and regulations that they have to comply with. So compliance training is another big issue. I've got to teach my people the right and legal way to do things as well. Those are just a few of the huge benefits that we get when we train our workforce properly. That's the key. While training is critical, it can't just be something that we do to check off a box. It's really important that training is effective. And to make sure it's effective, we have to measure it. There's several key questions that I always ask whenever I deliver training. The very first thing I want to know is, what did the student think of it? Did they see the benefit in the training? This doesn't guarantee that they really got anything out of the training, but if they didn't enjoy the training, it's certainly going to be a struggle for them to find value in it. Next thing I want to know is, well, did the student get it? Did they understand the information I delivered to them? Now, this can be as formal as a written test or a hands-on demonstration, or simply just asking some key questions. But I want to know, are they really absorbing what I'm telling them? Next, we want to look at what triggered the training to happen in the first place. And did the training meet whatever that trigger was? Let's say that all of a sudden my scrap rate on a production line has shot up. I want to know why, and I go out and I find out that my operators are throwing away scrap parts a lot more than they did last week. We do a little investigation and we find out that they're seeing a defect they've never seen before, and they assumed that it was bad. Now, had I trained them in the proper procedure when they see something new, they would have brought this to the attention of our quality department, and we could have made a judgment. Maybe they were defective and they did the right thing. Or it may be that this was just some anomaly that really didn't impact the customer or the quality of the product, and we could have saved those parts. The problem is, I didn't train them, so they didn't recognize it. Now, let's say in response to this, we do a training on what to do when you see a defect you've never seen before. Everybody goes through this training, and now we all know what to do. 2 weeks later, I get an anomaly that nobody's ever seen before. One of the operators on the lines throws their hand up and says, "Hey, wait a minute, there's something different here." My training worked, and I'm able to validate that. Of course, from a management standpoint, I want to know what's the bottom line on training. What is the return on investment? If I spend this time doing training, I want to see improvements, lower defect rates, higher productivity, things like that. So I need to think about, how do I measure my training's impact on the organization? It's really important that we train our employees. There's a huge skill gap out there in the workforce. I can't just assume they know things. I've got to test them, ask them questions, and help develop their skills. If you develop your employees, you train them and help them grow, there's a much greater chance they'll stick with you.